The room fell silent before anyone realized why. Laughter had been bouncing off the walls of the lakeside cabin all evening as old college friends reunited for the first time in years. Cards, music, and harmless party games had filled the air with nostalgia until one unexpected dare changed everything. Every eye slowly turned toward me as my former girlfriend, Grace, smiled with a mixture of confidence and hidden sadness and calmly said that if I was brave enough, I should kiss her. In that single moment, the years between us disappeared, but so did every wall I had carefully built around my heart. I had spent 3 years convincing myself that some stories were meant to stay unfinished, yet somehow life had just reopened the very chapter one had worked hardest to close. If you believe that kindness, hope, forgiveness, compassion, and second chances can change lives, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, subscribe to the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these meaningful stories reach more people who may need them today. My name is Nathan, and I lived in Portland, Oregon, where life had become comfortable but painfully predictable. After Grace and I ended our relationship years earlier, I buried myself in work as an architect. Friends believed I had moved on because I smiled often enough, but they never saw how every unfinished building reminded me of unfinished conversations. Our breakup had never come from betrayal or anger. Instead, it had grown from pride, misunderstandings, and terrible timing. When my father became seriously ill, I withdrew from everyone, convinced I had to carry every burden alone. Grace interpreted my silence as rejection, while I mistook her attempts to reach me as pressure I couldn't handle. Eventually, we simply walked away without truly fighting for each other. The reunion had been organized by our mutual friend Matthew, who somehow convinced nearly everyone from college to spend an entire weekend together at a peaceful cabin overlooking a quiet lake in northern Michigan. I almost declined after hearing Grace would be there, but something deep inside whispered that running forever was becoming exhausting. Throughout the first day, we barely exchanged more than polite smiles. Yet every accidental glance reminded me that people could change while somehow remaining completely familiar. The party game that night was supposed to be harmless. Friends laughed through ridiculous dares and embarrassing confessions until Grace's turn arrived. Instead of choosing someone else, she looked directly at me. The room filled with playful cheers, but behind her gentle smile I noticed nervousness. My own heart pounded louder than the music. Walking toward her felt less like crossing a living room and more like crossing years of regret. When we embraced briefly and shared a simple, respectful kiss on the cheek instead of anything dramatic, the room erupted with applause and laughter, but something much quieter happened inside both of us. Neither of us stepped away immediately. We simply smiled with the kind of understanding that only time can create. Later that evening, while everyone gathered around a fire outside, we found ourselves walking beside the lake. The stars reflected across the calm water, and for the first time in years, neither of us tried to defend the past. We admitted our mistakes without blaming one another. Grace shared how she had often written letters she never mailed. I confessed that I had read old birthday cards from her whenever life became overwhelming. We discovered that neither of us had truly stopped caring. We had simply convinced ourselves that it was too late to repair what had been broken. The next morning brought an unexpected challenge. Matthew's young niece, Hannah, accidentally twisted her ankle during a nature walk. Without hesitation, Grace knelt beside the frightened little girl, comforting her until help arrived. Watching her kindness reminded me that the qualities I had once loved had never disappeared. At the same time, Grace later admitted she had watched me patiently help Matthew's elderly father navigate the rocky trail, realizing I had become stronger instead of colder. Sometimes love doesn't return because people stay the same. Sometimes it returns because they finally become the people they were always meant to be. When the weekend came to an end, we stood beside our cars with no dramatic promises or impossible expectations. Instead, we agreed to start again, not where we had ended, but where two wiser people could begin. We would rebuild trust through honesty, patience, and friendship before asking life for anything more. It wasn't the fairy tale ending either of us imagined in college, but somehow it felt far more beautiful because it was real. If this story has touched your heart or reminded you that healing is possible, please support the video by liking it, sharing it with someone who may need hope today, and subscribing so you never miss another inspiring story. Before this story comes to a close, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been given a second chance by someone you never expected? Leave your answer in the comments because your experience might encourage someone else who is quietly struggling. As I drove away from the cabin, the rearview mirror reflected the peaceful lake growing smaller behind me, but for the first time in years, the future looked much larger than the past. Life had taught me that forgiveness isn't about pretending old pain never existed. It's about choosing not to let yesterday decide tomorrow. Sometimes the bravest step isn't kissing someone when everyone is watching. Sometimes it's believing that two imperfect hearts can still find their way home after learning how to carry love with humility, patience, and hope. And perhaps that's the greatest second chance any of us could ever receive.